Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's session with FlowForma and McKinley Irvin, family solicitors law firm over in the West Coast. Today we have myself, Shay O'Connor, Head of Solutions with FlowForma, and I'm happy to introduce Dustin Ray, who's a business process analyst with McKinley Irvin. Before we start, I just want to get a bit of housekeeping out of the way, just to let everybody know that the webinar is actually being recorded. And if you need any assistance during the call, you can email us at info@flowforma.com. Your lines are automatically muted, but you can type questions in the chat box, and we do encourage that. So if you do have questions, please enter them in, and we will try to get through as many of them as possible, whether they're for myself to do with the technology and or for Dustin to do with his experiences. When the webinar is completed, we will share the recording. We would ask also, if you do have a spare minute or two at the end of the webinar, to complete the feedback form. And without further ado, I'd like to say hello to Dustin. Are you there, Dustin?
Shay, how you doing?
Hey, how are things?
Going very well.
Good, good. So we've asked Dustin to come along because McKinley Irvin, in the stewardship of Dustin, have been going through a digital transformation within the organization. And we just felt that Dustin's experience and his experiences with going from manual to sort of digital automation would be beneficial to some of our interested listeners. So what I'm going to do today is just kick off with a few questions for you, Dustin, and then we're going to have a quick look at the system and a bit of give a sort of a brief run through the type of functionality you can expect from FlowForma.
Sounds good.
Great. So just to kick off, I mean, good place to start is at the beginning. Can you just tell us a little bit about McKinley Irvin and your role there?
Yeah, absolutely. So McKinley Irvin, we're a 120-person organization. We've got 6 offices up and down the Pacific Northwest in the United States here. We're one of the largest family law firms in the United States. And as far as my role here goes, law in the US has traditionally been really behind the times when it comes to being on the cutting edge of technology. The industry hasn't previously really been forced into that world yet, so they've kind of come kicking and screaming. So I've been really tasked with the job of how do we take the current talent that we have and how do we really optimize it via automation and technological advancement, and of course all of that is with the goal of furthering growth and profitability, because that's always going to be the goal.
Very good. A nice daunting task for you, all right?
Oh, a big one.
Yeah. Obviously when the reason you started venturing into sort of digital requirements and looking at technologies that you faced challenges. So what were the challenges that you were facing even before you started looking at automating?
Yeah, we were running into a few. One of the kind of classic items is that our people are always requiring items from the next department over. So we're all familiar with sending an email and desperately asking for something that you need that day. But how do you make sure that your request is actually being viewed by the person that needs to see it? How do you make sure that it's getting treated with the the appropriate priority?
Yeah.
And how do we make sure that things just don't get lost in in these vast inboxes that folks might otherwise have sort of untended?
Yeah.
So,
I think you called it before the source of if your source of the truth was your inbox, you have to address something.
Exactly. And and who hasn't seen at least certain folks at an organization that have a few thousand items in their inbox. And of course, all of this is taking, all these side projects are taking away from the core goal of, you know, serving your clients, you know, trying to get that, depending on the industry, you know, close that next sale. So, you know, how do we take these little functions and make sure that we're streamlining them and we're, you know, not losing them, you know, reducing errors, and, you know, making sure that you can just get the business humming.
Yeah, I like, so presumably you already have some sort of specific software for your industry that you would operate out of. That
Yes.
was, yeah. So I mean, we would find that quite commonly where an organization like yourselves would have a core product managing things, but as you were describing there, when you're looking at 1,000 items in your inbox, you basically need something to manage, to fill the cracks or the possible cracks that could be in the transferring of information and the transfer and the steps in processes within your organization. I mean, sort of,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
99% accurate is not really good enough in your business.
No, it's not. You know, errors are costly in any organization, and in the field of law, you know, it's something you really want to, you know, avoid at all possible costs. You know, every chance you have to reduce a mistake of some kind is really going to pay dividends for you. So that really is the goal. How do you get down to zero mistakes?
Did you have like a particular sort of motivation? So was there a main challenge? Was there something that just said, listen, this is too much, we need to address this? Or was it just a general, okay, this is mounting too high, we're trying to expand, we're trying and work as hard as we ever could, but we just need to
Yeah,
put
there
this in
there
place?
were there were a particular couple workflows, one of which I'll speak to in a minute here,
Okay.
you can see that you could just see that, you know, when people go from emailing then to wandering over to the other person's desk in frustration because, you know, they're at their wits end, you know, that's a good motivator for the industry. You
Yeah.
know, you can clearly see where the frustration and, you know, where items might start to, you know, to break down more than they should. You've still got the flow of information going, but, you know, everyone would agree it's more painful than it should be. So how
Okay.
can you go from there to, you know, to a smooth running operation? I think that provided some excellent motivation.
And that sort of brings me on to the next point. So uh, how, so when you sort of got to that point, how was the tool, how was FlowForma Process Automation, how was that implemented to address your challenges?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of workflows that just immediately sort of screamed the, you know, the need for automation, and these were the first couple that we started with.
Mm,
The first one is that, you know, something, I'll actually address the second one here, the new employee onboarding. You know,
yeah,
every organization deals with this. You know,
yeah,
you've got new people coming in the door, you know, growing economy, you know, a lot of companies are looking to expand.
yeah,
But bringing on a new employee is you know, is a costly endeavor. You've
mm,
got at least in our side, we've got a huge number of people that are touching that new employee even before they ever come in the door.
yeah,
We've got, of course, HR is handling their recruitment, and then their significant data entry prior to coming on board. We've got their direct supervisors providing input. Then you've got the IT side prepping
yeah,
all of their accounts, and all of these groups are constantly sending little bits of information back and forth. Previously, what you're seeing is, again, another email, like, oh, here's the email update from IT, here's the second email update from HR, and at any step in there, you run the risk of running that flow, you know, into the
yeah,
ground if someone is ignoring that email.
yeah, 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 that makes sense.
And so that, you know, perfect example for where FlowForma, where you can structure these items for, you know, first we're, you know, going to have HR work on their items, and then we're going to have the hiring manager jump in with clear notifications along the way. That's where you at least have a chance of avoiding those roadblocks that you might
Yeah,
otherwise do in a manual process. So that kind of process automation we've seen pay a lot of dividends. I'll jump over to the other item here, the managing client funds, another very consistent item that we would see many times a day.
mm,
So for us, this is referencing items that we are spending on the client's behalf. So they're paying for a court fee of some kind,
sure,
or paying for an expert witness, for example.
yeah,
And these processes are like many accounting departments, they're going to happen many times a day, and they really all have to get out the door, the day they come in. Again, this is a situation where misses, in this category are going to be costly and, to be avoided at all costs.
Yeah, and when you're dealing with money, you have to keep an eye on everything. That's for sure.
Absolutely, yeah, not something you want to be careless with. So.
Other people's money, yeah.
Other people's money. It's pretty essential,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Critical item.
It's probably the most important thing you have to ever deal with, other people's money.
Exactly. So here we took a step where we would have at least 7 emails going out per transaction, and we've now reduced that into a single FlowForma item that everyone involved in the process can look on, track, audit if need be. The accounting department is a big fan of that aspect, and provide digital backups for us. Excellent. So that's critical.
Now, I don't want to put you on the spot now, okay? And you can be I'd like you to be honest on this one. Did you create these flows yourself?
I did. Yeah, these were both able to be created just by myself. I certainly have a lot of support from our technology folks and from your folks at FlowForma, which I appreciate. Yeah. But one of the great aspects of FlowForma is that you really can place it in the hands of one business user, such as myself, and you can really start to implement these things on your own. It does not take a team of developers.
No, well, I would imagine that's probably one of the primary things you wanted to control, was the ability to edit your processes, create new ones, etc. From a timing point of view, how did you? Again, be as honest as possible, but in your expectations about the turnaround time for these processes, how did you find the time it took to get something up and running?
Yeah, I would say once you've got the system in place and you've had a little bit of training on it, I think rollout time for a relatively straightforward process can easily be done in a week, especially if you're able to dedicate some time to that. So I've been, and that again speaks to the ability to do all the more. So the quicker you can get them out the door, the quicker you can get to the next one. But yeah.
And speaking of that, so obviously you've started off in a few very core processes. What sort of level of intensity and growth do you see going into process creation and automation now?
Yeah, we're only looking to see that line point upward right now. So we're currently at about 15 flows at the moment. Cool. And for the next year, we're targeting even stronger growth. So the big goal really is to see, if it is a standardized process, why not? Let's get that into a piece of some process automation. You can see the dividends pay off on these pretty quickly.
Yeah, because that's an interesting point, because it's funny, we would have found that now with a lot of clients who have this idea at the start that, okay, I've got this problem, I just want to fix this. So you would have had managing client funds or new employee onboarding, where it's imperative that you need to box this off and get it running. But once you get comfortable, you sort of go, okay, I don't really need a lot of these papers and spreadsheets knocking around my office anymore. You start chipping away at the rest of them. So I presume, again, we do find that clients who embrace process and digital transformation and process automation tend to start doing that. And did you find that way? You just sort of said, hey, I can keep doing this.
Yeah, and in fact, I'm glad you brought up spreadsheets, because I think that's another incredibly common item, in the business world today. Every person and team is managing their own small host of spreadsheets, functioning as a sort of low-end database functionality. And for me, that represents a great trigger whenever I hear anyone talking about a personally managed spreadsheet with critical business information. That lets me flag that process of theirs as one for future FlowForma workflow, because usually that means that there's some fertile ground there for additional automation.
Cool. Just now that you sort of, you've described getting stuck in and creating your processes and moving on to that, moving on to the growth of creating processes to help your digital transformation, did you see specific benefits to the company? I mean, it's all very well becoming automated, and it sounds good, you know, I'm going to get more efficient, but did you actually see benefits?
Yes, yeah. So that earlier problem where I mentioned where we had, you know, folks sort of storming the gates of accounting or other departments, we've seen that come way down.
Yeah.
So far fewer people frustrated that their particular request isn't getting addressed at the speed that they want to see. So that really speaks to, you know, improving the visibility and clearly the priority and the ability to manage those number of requests coming in the door has, you know, greatly improved with the implementation of these systems. You know, the moment you're not just struggling to figure out where your requests are and you can actually focus on accomplishing them, you know, that's just going to be pure, you know, efficiency gains right there.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a big one. And you know, some of the other items that you can see here, you know, we have a great deal of requirements from the legal side, you know, being in the legal field ourselves. So ensuring that we are getting these essential pieces of information. You know, how many times have we had to email someone back because they didn't provide, you know, a critical piece of information?
Yeah.
With the ability of FlowForma to just say that this is a required item that has to be, you know, filled out before, you know, allowing for submission, it can really cut down on just the simple mistake of folks just accidentally omitting, you know, something that's essential to get their request or process going.
Yeah, so a bit like the way of just like tapping you on the shoulder and saying, by the way, you need to do this before we complete X, Y, or Z. So it's just that automated tap on the shoulder to make sure, yeah,
Yeah,
nothing gets
absolutely.
omitted. Yeah.
And you know, and if left to our own devices, and if we all have 10 things that we have to fill out, we're all probably going to forget one or two of them. So you
Yeah,
know,
I mean, maybe
why
not
not give
today, but
ourselves that?
tomorrow you
Yeah,
might. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, why not lay out that structure that is always reminding us of what is essential?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it's funny, when you get users employed in using the processes, you're really just looking to coordinate that the defined structures that you want are consistent, you know, that you have a method of operating and here's the way to do it. So there's no guesswork. We're just going to do it like this, step by step, and nothing gets omitted.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very true.
Yeah. Okay. But one of the areas then, just from a sort of an IT point of view, is that you're saying there that the maximizing of you, so you've invested in IT, so like you guys have invested in like the Office 365 and other
Yeah.
IT, yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
so now you get a chance to maximize the engine basically there.
Yeah, it's very true. Our existing Office 365 licenses give us access to the SharePoint platform.
Yeah.
And the fact that FlowForma can run off of is running off of the SharePoint platform for us represents, you know, not only a cost savings from, you know, not requiring any additional infrastructure, but also just an ease of use of really being, you know, pretty darn quick to plug and play and get it up and running. You know, start setting up some very simple list databases and, you know, get out the door.
Yeah.
So that was a big win for us being able to do so.
Okay. So I'm not a big fan of the phrase, but sometimes it encapsulates it. Is the ability? Obviously, you were suggesting to the business, okay, we need to get with digital transformation. We need an automation tool.
Mm-hmm.
Was it good for you to have a quick win scenario that, be it document generation or, I mean, something that was visible to the business to say, oh yeah, okay, I can quickly see a benefit here.
Yeah. In our case, that was absolutely our payment system that we were talking about a little bit ago. So that was because that was the source of one of those things where the majority of the company is involved in it. So everyone is touching that pain point.
Yeah.
And I would, for other users out there, I would recommend finding something similar that is, you know, fairly broad-based. A good number of people in the organization experience it, and you know, of course, you're always going to be focusing on the ones that have the most potential for a turnaround. So, you know, that checked all the boxes for us. You know, taking too much time, everyone used it, and everyone is feeling sort of the drawbacks of the existing manual system. So the ability to turn that into an automated system and then let everyone see it and feel it, that does end up in a good quick win.
Just then, so you get your quick win, and we're looking here at the continuous improvements as well. Just one of the items there. Have you gone back into processes? So you put in version 1 of your funds management process or your onboarding. Did you actually then put in any incremental improvements on it? Did you make changes at any stage, or have you just left it like that?
So my experience has been here that once our users start seeing the system and they start understanding even just a little bit of how it works and what it can do, I've had no problem with feedback and requests for changes to these systems. Cool. So okay. I view that as, of course that's a little bit more work than just being able to set it and forget it, but I think continuous improvement is just going to be an essential part, of the long-term plan. Fantastic. So we've got plenty of folks here who would love to see, like, oh, get my item in that workflow. Like, oh, don't forget this component over here. So it's good. You want to see that kind of input from the business.
It's good for engaging everybody. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think it's probably going to be your last official question, Dustin. I mean, the reason why you chose FlowForma for process automation.
Right.
Why did you? I know what you needed to do, and I know we fit the bill, but why did you actually go, no, okay, I'm going with these guys?
Right. So we did look at a few process automation solutions, and we found in the marketplace, first of all, some of them very much did not feel that they were priced for mid-sized business. They felt that they were. I feel like I was looking at large enterprise pricing, so cost effective right out the gate. And the fact that this was, again, based on infrastructure that was already in place, that this wasn't going to require an entire, custom development, team or, a consulting gig for someone to come out and make happen, that's a big win, so that we can get started up on our own, with support from FlowForma. That was another, solid motivator for us there. And I would say in general, I feel that FlowForma is really well suited for our style of business. So, an office style workspace, the kind of functions that we were looking for, the features really seem to be there. So,
sorry, I was going to say, and you guys don't have or would prefer not to have people who are just skilled in doing, say, FlowForma, or people who are just skilled in doing development tasks, where business users now can apply their processes into an automation tool now. So
very true. Yeah. Personally, we do not have full-time developers on site, so that the ability for us to, so far, and we haven't had to bring in a single developer for FlowForma or for any of the items that I've mentioned so far.
Yeah.
That just gives us the independence and the flexibility to really work at our pace. And we're seeing our cost of each implementation reduce as from a time perspective, and from that value perspective keeps on improving.
Yeah, it's funny, you guys in this case, you don't have full-time developers, etc. Now we do operate in organizations that have full-time developers, and it's funny, they initially it's saying, okay, it's a no-code scenario, but the reality is because of the no-code, it means that you can actually get through way more work in a far more efficient and faster fashion than if you had the code. So even if you had a coder, or somebody who was a technology and just a pure IT business analyst, or SharePoint developer, etc., they turn around processes really fast, again, because they usually have a list the length of their arm of requirements, and
yes.
you're coming across any of the organizations that are looking at digital transformation. It's like once you put in the first couple of processes, you go, okay, now the list is getting really long. And we need to turn that around, and we need to get a bit of familiarity. So it's funny. You guys, as I say, it's great that you have business users that just apply themselves to the creation of processes. guess the no code just helps that.
It does, and it really changes the tenor of the project when you can, place this in the hands of a business user, sort of set them loose to start working, determine the needs and the requirements for the organization, turn around a product pretty quickly, and then of course you can always, as we were earlier discussing, send it back for a round of improvements after a couple weeks of the folks having a chance to run through it, and you very likely will get that feedback if you open yourself up to it.
Yeah, it's one of the benefits we always find with the no code scenario is that you can turn around a prototype really fast, so you can get feedback from users really quickly. So they say, oh no, I don't want it this way, I want it another way. But just on the no code part, and I don't know if I ever asked you this before, but did you know that there was that there were no code options in the marketplace, like when you started searching?
I think that was probably the most pleasant surprise, that when we really got into searching for a process automation solution. Yeah. So I knew about low code options that were out there that would require only minimal development work. But yeah, that there were truly no code solutions out there, and I can attest that is the case, is a big jump for those of us that are not particularly skilled in a given development language. So that is, really changed the ability. That made it so much more accessible than it otherwise would have been. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Dustin. I'm going to ask you to hang around for a few minutes, because there'll be questions coming through, and I've already noticed there are some questions coming through already, which I won't throw in your direction just yet. I'll give you a pause for thought, but if you could hang on, it'd be great.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. Thanks again, Dustin. So guys, and again, really appreciate Dustin's input there, and being forthright in answering the questions for us. I just want to give you a little overview on ourselves, really short one, and then jump into the product to give you an idea on some of the functionality, etc. You may ask yourself, why FlowForma? So because there are process tools out in the marketplace, but as Dustin was saying there, not too many have a no code scenario. So we find there's actually 92% of our customers never touch code. There is the facility to add code if you wished. So we do give that facility within the product for enterprises that have coding capabilities. So you can expand on the product if you wish, and it doesn't interfere with your upgrade path, which is pretty cool. But also it allows for the maximization of your Microsoft investment. So the really nice thing is now Office 365 and Azure are really well connected. So as a result, FlowForma can be offered not only in Office 365, but on premise and in hybrid mode. So in other words, you could have environments that talk to each other externally. So you could have a customer facing environment connected to your internal environment, but nobody gets to touch your internal environment. So the good folk at Microsoft have really got that down pretty well now, with the connections between Azure and Office 365 that easily facilitate, again, with a no code scenario, to create all these environments that talk to each other. Time to value is massive. So automatically, when you can create something faster without the requirement for skilled personnel, your savings are immediate. Especially if you have it budgeted that you need to do something, and then all of a sudden you find, no, I don't have to pay for coders now. It makes a big difference. So these are sort of three cornerstones from a FlowForma point of view that is important to remember. We have a lot of our customer base literally ranges from one side of the world to the other. So from New Zealand all the way over to McKinley Irvin over in the north west coast, and all in between. So we hit every continent. We've over 100 customers, a lot of really large ones, and some smaller ones, some medium sized. As Justin was saying, like everybody is trying to go down the digital transformation route, and we're here to help. So what I want to do now is I'm going to pop over to the system, and I'm going to show you around. So what I have here, this is just to explain, this is just a landing page of FlowForma. It's our default trial site. So if any of you guys want to sign up for a trial, it's in the Microsoft store, and you can just look up FlowForma and you can download it into your SharePoint environment straight away, and you will end up with something like this. This landing page has some of our components and some of our template processes. So we would have a suite of processes that you can try out and work around just to get you kick-started. You can edit them, you can do whatever you like with them. Just to explain some of the components here. So for example, I've got my to-do list, which has a lot there at the moment, 66, but if I pop over to another environment, you'll see there's only 6 there. So basically it's personalized. So it tells you as a user how many processes are awaiting your input. You also can have a look at your own processes there, whichever ones you have created, and see where they stand at the moment, so you can see what status they're at. And like with all nice SharePoint lists, you can filter and you can decide what you want to look at, who has what, etc. So these are just default components. What I want to do is I'm going to pop into one of our templates and just show you around for a moment. So Dustin was talking earlier on about onboarding, new employee onboarding. Now we just have a generic onboarding process that sits here at the moment, and as one of our templates. Now, as I say, it is generic, so it can be added upon, etc., and edited. Just to explain what you're seeing here, you've got a header at the top, which allows you to, nice for all your branding, etc., but also for some repeating information. Usually it will be sort of non-sensitive information, dates, times, user IDs, reference numbers, that sort of thing that you'd have repeating up here. And then you have our step bar. So your step bar shows you the path of the process as it stands. This is obviously can change. At the moment, it identifies that we're on step 1, and each of the steps has to go to a resource. So it has to go to an individual or a group, but it has to go somewhere. So everything is audited, and where it goes, how long it's there, who's it with, etc. So it has to go somewhere. When you're in each of the steps, you then get your list of questions. Now, what I want to do is I just pop in some information just to give you an idea. And then I'll go into the background and show you how it hangs together. So it's just standard, and all of this is, by the way, is automatically generated. So all that has happened within the process is that we have put in the steps and the data that's required within all of the steps, and then the FlowForma has automatically generated these forms. Now these forms are all in HTML5, which makes them device independent. So as a result, you can use it on your mobile. We actually have an app that comes with FlowForma also, so you've no need to create a separate app, because when you create your process, this will be automatically rendered for your app as well. As you see, as you go through a process, questions can appear and disappear depending on your selections. When you submit, then it goes to the next resource who is in the chain of the process. Now, in this case, it's me, because from a demo point of view, you'll notice here that there are 3 steps that are slightly different size to the others. They are parallel steps. If I was to reject at this stage, it would actually pop back to the start and it's asked me for rejection reason. I'm just going to accept it, and I'm going to go to the next step. Now, with parallel steps, what happens is there will be 3 individuals or 3 resources who will get each of these steps. I can, because I'm getting them all, I can see them all. So as Dustin was saying earlier on, you have particular groups or individuals or departments that would take care of different areas of this process, signing off on the documents. So you can bring in contracts, health declaration, that sort of thing. You've got your IT prep. So you could put in what equipment is required, nice repeating tables, etc., what applications are required. all in preparation for the individual starting. And also then your security people from an IT point of view will, and from a facilities point of view, will get their chance to say, okay, is there parking space for this? Okay, what's the reference? Or say no. So you can see that the forms change depending on what selections you make. The reality is you should never see something that you don't need to use. So we working off lean methodology, it just means that you should keep the screens as clean as possible. You'll notice here at the bottom there are some standard functions within FlowForma. These can be renamed, so you don't have to have them calling delegate or pass back, but delegate is, as it says, if I wish to delegate the step to somebody else, I may not be in a position to finish it off. I can delegate that individual. They'll receive a notification with a link and they go straight into that step. You don't have to have SharePoint knowledge. Basically, people who use FlowForma have no idea they're using SharePoint for the most part, because the forms just pop up and they put in their input and they move the process along. I'm just going to submit, oh yeah, sign off document. So I have a validation error here, which is great. I have to put in a date. So here you notice that there's a red asterisk. This is a date has to be entered. So now I'll move on to the preparing of the welcome pack. And then I'm happy with this, and I'm just going to submit. Now, the reason I'm going through the full process here just to show you is that as part of this process, we also have document generation. So while we were going through the process, we have templates associated with the process, picks up the information, creates a contract out of the information I've supplied, and you can store it in SharePoint, you can send it by email, you can attach it to the process. It's basically there for you to use. Now, what I'll do is that's a very simple process for onboarding. But what I'd like to do is just pop into the background to show you how that hangs together. So if I just go into flow definitions. So I just pop into onboarding. Now, FlowForma is a 3-in-1 toolkit. So basically what that means is that you got forms, workflow, and document generation all together. So this is all housed here within the Flow Designer. I can see my process here as it sits. Here are my 3 main steps and my 3 parallel steps. I can also see this visually. So we have a visual Flow Designer, so I can create my flow visually and or manually just through entering of the steps and questions, etc. This information here also is automatically documented. So when you finish your process, you can do an output that shows you the workflow here in a graphical form and all the detail listed, the rules, the outputs, the inputs, etc. Very, very handy in regards to it's kind of the cart before the horse scenario. Instead of creating your documentation, create your process and your documentation is created automatically. On the right hand side, you'll notice that we have a rules area. So here you've got the option of adding rules to the process in regards to how it runs. So we've got the workflow control. So who gets to see what, stepping assigned, you've got the ability to do passbacks. So as well as that, when you move it through the different areas within FlowForma, the different rule types will show. So this will amend. You will only ever see rules that you can use within the process. And then as you create rules, they get listed here so you can view them. So here, for example, you've got the ability to check on questions, steps, who sees what. You've got a data integration scenario, so you can pull in information from other databases, from SharePoint lists, etc. Get information from your user profile. Basically utilizing all the information that you have already brought together as an organization, and FlowForma sits on top of all your information and just brings process into your group and brings some regularity and consistency. You've got a lot of, I mean, I'm not going to go through all of the functions in a short space of time, but you got between your data, you got your communications in regards to your emails, you've got your document generation. So here, for example, that's my generate my welcome letter, etc., for the pack at the end. So simple scenario here, I can select my template, put in my folder where it's going to be, that sort of thing. What I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to make a quick change to the process and show you how it hangs together. So I'm going to simply add a step. I'm going to add a few questions to it then, and just a couple of questions and a simple rule just to give you an idea. So here in the onboarding, I'm just going to add a new step. Now I could add an existing step, could add a parallel group. I could go to my Visual Flow Designer and add a step. I'm just going to do it here manually. Just put it in my new step. Save that. Now that will automatically appear at the bottom, but in this case, I'm just going to pop it up to the top. And let me see, I'm just going to add a couple of questions to it. So we call fields questions. So I'm just going to add a new question. So something simple like, okay, username. Now here you notice in the question types, you've got all of the SharePoint question types or field types that you can imagine, plus a lot of others. So for example, your calculated fields, your file upload, that's fine. That's all within bringing stuff within SharePoint. But you also have lookups to SQL Server, CRM, whatever databases you're connected to, your persons or groups. Some really cool ones then, you've got your wet signature, which is basically your physical signature. So a field within your form that allows for, on a touch screen, for somebody and or a mouse just to sign a document or sign a form, which can be then included in a document. You've got voting, which it permits multiple people getting together and placing votes on certain decisions, etc. Get location, which is basically for people out and about, that it picks up your coordinates. So some quite cool things there. We would always be enhancing the product in regards to things like that, where if question types come up that we find are beneficial, they get added. It's a nice thing as well, where even from a client point of view, clients can ask us, listen, we need, and that's where most of the best ideas come from. They require certain things like the get location, we put it in. So here I'm just going to go to persons or groups. I'm going to go to current user. I could specify it has to be part of a certain group, etc. But I'm just going to go to current user, save that. So here in this new step, I've got one question. I'm going to make that disabled. And then I'm going to add another, just one question and a rule. So I'm going to add another question here. And simple proceed. I'm going to make that a yes, no. I'm also going to make that a required field. You can, here you've got a help area and you can have links to different, it could be documents on your SharePoint, it could be web pages, etc. So you can say for further details, please go here, etc. Would have been handy if I'd saved that. So luckily I remember where I left off. So I'm just going to go proceed, yes, no. Okay, I'm going to make that a required field. I'm going to save that. And what I'll do is put in one more question, and I'm going to have a rule kicking off it. So the rules part is the really cool part, because you kind of easily get the fact you can add steps and questions and so on, but adding rules without having to code is really neat. I'm just going to put explain, and I'm going to make that a multiple line of text there. I'm going to make it 4 lines in size. So you can have all sorts of validations as well for your question types also. Now, going with the sort of lean methodology, you should never see what you don't need to see. I'm going to hide that explain question, but I'm going to put a rule here behind proceed. And here in my rules area, I'm going to go to my workflow control area, and I've got my hide show questions. So here, I'm literally going to put in a brand new rule from scratch. And the rules all work pretty much the same way. You got a description of it here, and just to help me along, I'm just going to put in hide show explain. You have your conditions, and then you have your actions. Now, in your conditions, you always work with the thinking to yourself if something happens. So here, I'm saying that if proceed equals, now I could say not equals is blank, greater than, less than, matches a pattern. We're just going to say if equals no. Now I could add more rules, and I could make it and or, that sort of scenario, but I'm just going to keep it simple for the moment. So my rule condition would be if the proceed question equals no, what is my action? So my action at the moment is going to be that this explain question, I'm going to show it. I could do more, and this is where it gets really cool in regards to making a screen dynamic based upon selections. You can really condense manual documents that have so many different categories and compartments and sections into a really neat net amount of information required just by hiding and showing information based upon selections. So I'm going to save that. So now just to recap, what I've done is I've added a step, added a few questions, and I've put in a simple rule. That's all I've done. I'm going to close that process now, and when I go in again, so back to my landing page. Now, just remember these, all of these processes, by the way, even though they're behind tiles, they actually are just a URL. So you can have them sitting on a desktop as an icon. You would have it sitting on your intranet as a link, that sort of thing. So I'm just going to click onboarding. And you see you've got my new step here. So we've got proceed. If I went to submit, it'll say validation error. Great. If I say yes, everything is good. But if I said no, it's going to ask me to explain why. So it's just a simple rule kicking off. Now I don't have anything else put in there in regards to what you would typically do here is that you would reject if you said no and you went to submit, it would just reject the process, etc. In this case, I just have it. It's not doing any other action after this. But you can see how straightforward it is to add a step, to make a change, to add a rule. And basically, even from a data point of view, when you bring in data, it's always a mapping exercise, again, no code scenario. A nice feature that is within the system is that you can put timings on your processes and timings on your steps, which gives you the facility then of checking your SLAs. So for example, with the onboarding one, I can see that I've got 5 delayed in my onboarding, in my open ones for onboarding, and I can go in and check these out, and maybe I need to, so I can see it was assigned to a SharePoint application. Me being an administrator, I should be able to, yeah, I can delegate this if I wanted to somebody else because this is blocked off. This is just it's a nice facility to have where you can check on anything that's not on time. You can even check the ones that are on time, but you also then have the facility in our historical flow analysis. You can check on not only the active processes that are in motion, but also the ones that were completed. And why would you do that? So for example, if I was to check again on, where's my onboarding? There we are. If I was to click on this, what it gives me are my bottlenecks. So I can see that in this process, okay, the information's been added correctly here. It's pretty good. The 15, 14 are on time. Same here. Only they're down to 13 now because of the one is sitting here. But then we have delays in all of these. So it's half and half. Well, not half and half, but it's like 30% are delayed. So I can see who are my bottlenecks, which ones are bottlenecked, and then try and find out some information about it. Just a neat facility to enable you to check on your process and how they're moving along. You can, again, as an administrator, then you can actually decide to delegate them. Okay. Now, obviously, this is a kind of a very quick whirlwind view of FlowForma. We have quite a comprehensive list of facilities, etc. What I'd ask you to do is that if you have specific requirements or queries, just ask us, and we'll make it we'll try our best to answer everything and get back to you with information. That's if you think of anything after this. But at the moment, I think we have some questions have come in. And Dustin, straight away, over to you. So let me see. Just gonna pop back here. So the 1 week estimate. So just earlier on, I remember you were saying about the 1 week, about the process.
Yes.
How does this work with the change management tasks and comms to the business? So how do you get the lawyers/business services teams to accept the change they are being asked to do?
Yeah, that's a great one. So for me, I must admit that I feel pretty fortunate that most of my requirements come directly from the executive level team at McKinley Irvin here. So at least for the moment right now, we have such demand that I am basically being fed these projects from the top. So it's, in many ways, this is the standard question of buy-in. So making sure that you have critical personnel at your place of business that are excited about this kind of change. And in my case, actively saying like, all right, here are our priorities for the quarter. How many of these can we get rolled out? So in that case, it makes it so that it's not just myself saying, let's use this system. You've got all of your big stakeholders saying, this is, we were seeing problems with the manual, so we're going to push towards the digital. If lacking that level of, C-level buy-in, I would recommend reaching out to the folks that are again having those problems. So look around for those pain points. So instead of it being you trying to force a new system on people, really approach it as coming in and offering a solution. And if there are those pain points, I think you'll find that people are pretty willing to at least give a new system a try.
Cool. Okay, thanks for that. Another question here, and I think I better handle this one. Would you please elaborate on the cybersecurity measures for a beginner like me that are implemented in your cloud FlowForma platform? Thank you. So just to explain from an application point of view and from a framework point of view, FlowForma is an app that sits on top of your SharePoint environment. So as a result, the security is taken care of by your SharePoint. So whatever security measures are involved with that Microsoft, if you're an Office 365, it's all based on Microsoft set of security measures, which are pretty comprehensive. And as well, if you're on Azure, same applies. It has to sit on your SharePoint. So from a security point of view, you have that baseline where you are relying on Microsoft to make sure that their security is in place. After that, it is are you opening up your SharePoint to the outer world? So if you have your own SharePoint environment locked down, you're fine. As I say, FlowForma is just an app. And on that, another thing to remember is that FlowForma, we don't retain any data. So all your data is retained within your own tenancy. That's really important. So wherever you are in the world, your data is going to be residing in your tenancy. So even from a sort of cross-border scenario, if you're in the US, it's going to be sitting on US servers. If you're in Europe, it's going to be on European servers, etc. So that was just, I hope that answers the security question. Another question here, and we get asked this quite often, is about reporting. So user here uses Power BI. Can they link FlowForma to it for reporting? Yes, is a quick answer. FlowForma has no data feed. So for any of you who have BI tools, even if you're only using Excel, all of the data is retained and it's fed into, so it's all retained within the SharePoint SQL Server database. RO data feed actually filters to just FlowForma information that then is linked to your business intelligence tool, be it Excel, be it Power BI in this case, and you can report accordingly. Another question here. I think it's probably, Dustin, I might ask you to answer this one because I'm going to tell you it's a really short space of time, but
Mhm.
we have a question here from someone saying, how long was the learning curve to fully adopt and start using FlowForma?
Yeah, well, I would take a chance to recommend the services that you guys provide for onboarding.
Okay.
So I signed up with the sort of the onboarding package, and I was quite happy to do so. That gave us some dedicated support hours, and that was a fantastic way for me to get my start there. There was no need to do any additional training besides some quick over-the-phone questions when I was at the start of my development process. So I would again say that this is, if you dedicate yourself to getting your first workflow up and running, especially with some quick support from FlowForma, I think that's a week-long process.
Yeah, okay. You're referring to our Sure Start facility. So
Yes.
Sure Start,
Yeah.
it's a reduced rate onboarding option that it's basically just to try and get you up and running quickly and using best practice. So thanks, Ricardo, for that question. Now, hang on, sorry, we have another one here. I think I answered this already. Is it possible to kick off process from our intranet? Yes, from your intranet. Yes, it is, because they just are URLs in the end. So when you create your process, it ends up as a URL. You can distribute that whichever way you like, so it can sit anywhere. On your desktop, it can be on your intranet, etc. Is FlowForma available on mobile? Yeah, I kind of touched on that earlier on. It is available on your mobile. So apart from the fact that it's available on any browser and is device independent, we do have an app. So the app, when you create a process, it's automatically rendered rendered for your mobile. And I think that's it. There's a few more questions there, but I think I have, let me see, can FlowForma, yeah, one more there. I just commit, can FlowForma pull information from Salesforce? Yes, indeed it can. So basically, obviously there are an awful lot of databases out there in the world, but the reality is some of them are quite large, and we've come across them quite often. So the likes of Salesforce, for example, we will quite commonly come up with customers who are looking to integrate with their Salesforce environment. What happens is with that, because like with the likes of Salesforce or SAP or any of those bigger ERP systems, because they're so large, it tends to take us a few days to pinpoint exactly the information that you want to integrate with and to fill that connection. But it's been done many times, and I'm glad to say it works really well. So guys, I think we're just about out of time, and I really want to thank you guys for listening today, and especially want to thank Dustin for your input today, and even it's an early start for you, I know, and we really appreciate that.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. If anybody would like to try a trial, it's available on you can go to our website at www.flowforma.com/trial. You can go into our demo. There's a whole raft of information on our website. I have to say our marketing people are really intensive in keeping that up to date with seriously relevant information, a lot of really good case studies, etc. And so nice customer insights that will help. I think, do you guys have one up there, Dustin? I think you do. Have a case study? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe we do.
Yeah. So, and we have from other industries as well. So you might want to, if you need some late night reading, it's always good to look at a FlowForma case study. Okay, guys, just want to thank everybody, and again, thank Dustin, and hope you have a pleasant day. Take care.